Assuming that the microphone is working, this will just be a story from fanfiction from 2022. I'm just gonna read, called Interview with a Murderbot, just written to point out many of the things wrong with the series. Anyways, well, don't you think you'd be assuming this fucking microphone is working? I might just be speaking to no one. Well, don't you think you'd be more comfortable using other pronouns? I mean, it is used for things in this language, not people. Let me put it in my nice text for a minute. This was coming from a human from Preservation who'd been born here and raised here, so you could see why Murderbot had been so skeptical and resigned about Preservation's super totally awesome for real so-called equality between bots and real actual people. The human in question was sitting in the front row of chairs in front of the stage, wearing a multi-piece outfit of gray, orange, and white, with long pants, but sleeves that cut off at the elbow, a very wide belt, large red-tinted glasses, and a wide-brimmed silver hat. Why exactly had Murderbot agreed to put up with this shit again? Oh, right, to fight for that so-called equality that apparently already existed, that totally didn't need to be fought for or anything, because things were as good as they needed to get. Bots already had equal rights. No, they literally didn't. They didn't need any more, and constructs certainly didn't need any rights. Totally. For sure. Murderbot had to put up with this shit now, so other people who came after it wouldn't have to. It was for the greater good of all society, and totally admirable and awesome and selfless and blah blah blah. What it was obnoxious and infuriating and exhausting, but at least it was getting paid for it. Oh wait, just kidding. No, it wasn't. Mensa hadn't been able to convince anyone in the crappy government she was no longer a part of that this Q&A session was a real job / public service they were performing that everybody involved should be fairly compensated for. More than half the people in charge of the government still didn't even want Murderbot here. There was no way they were going to fund the public outreach programs designed to get more people to welcome constructs to their crappy planet. The fact that it had to do this for free was just adding insult to injury. It was one thing to talk to Dr. Bharadwaj in the privacy of her office. Murderbot liked her. She was smart, she was funny, and it didn't have to explain every single detail of something for her to get it, and she didn't ask it absurdly crappy questions or try to demean it. It was another thing entirely to be sitting in front of humans on camera, letting them ask crappy questions, and having to put up with their bullshit when they refused to accept its answer. Thankfully, Murderbot had its drones, so it didn't have to worry about meeting the bigoted human's eyes as it said flatly, its voice carrying throughout the room thanks to the sound amplifier clipped to its ear, down to its jaw. I thought bots on Preservation were considered people. For now, it was going to ignore the main part of the question, because this was just too annoying to ignore. Just to be petty, it tapped 9JX on the feed a moment ahead of time to give it warning, then added out loud, "Hey, 9JX, aren't you a people?" Humans, it had learned after doing one of these interview panels with 3.14, a bot possibly even more determined to be obnoxious to humans than Murderbot, fucking hated it when you said a people instead of a person, so, following 3.14's example, Murderbot made sure to purposefully say it this way whenever it could, just to piss the annoying humans off. 9JX, its current teammate for this panel, being the representative for the cargo haulers. Oh, I read that wrong. 9JX, its current teammate for this panel, being the representative for the cargo haulers. It had been sitting over on the other end of the stage, waiting patiently for questions aimed at it that didn't seem to be coming. All the questions up until now, except one, "Did you get to pick your own paint color?" Yes, had been for Murderbot alone. 9JX was built to lift and transport large cargo containers outside the actual dock, so it was smaller than most of the cargo hauler types Murderbot had seen in various ports, but it was still bigger than a human or a construct, and designed with functionality in mind, not aesthetics or appealing to human sensibilities. Unlike constructs like Murderbot or other humanoid bots, it didn't have any eyes or anything remotely resembling a human face. It looked more like a vehicle than a person, and for a lot of humans, that was enough in their minds to qualify it solidly as an object instead of a person, even though they were the ones who had given it intelligence in the first place, because humans were fucking crappy. Like, It's not like you can accidentally invent artificial intelligence. It requires a lot of technical skills and expensive materials and blueprints and all of this complicated shit that it just wasn't possible to do by accident. It wasn't a 12-step process. It was a 5,000-step process at minimum. No human had ever sat around and just accidentally built an artificial intelligence. Anyways, 9JX had decided to have speakers installed specifically so it could talk to humans without being connected to the feed, since it thought that was distracting. Which sounded unbelievable to Murderbot. How was it possible to function without constant access to the feed? 9JX had the opposite question for it. How can you function with all those distractions racing around at all times? 9JX said in the voice synthesized it for it specifically from multiple donated human recordings, "Yes, I am a people. That's why I'm sitting here, after all." Yes, almost all the robots were in on the running gag. Turns out, they were actually funny when you were a part of the joke, especially when the joke made obnoxious humans mad. "And aren't your pronouns its?" Murderbot asked. "Yep, they're fun, and I picked them out all by myself." It was true. 9JX had been assigned he/him pronouns upon construction, and had used those pronouns for the first 30 years of its life until it decided to change them. It continued, "I guess you could say I'm something of a trendsetter." Also true, considering 9JX was one of the oldest bots on preservation that was still functioning. It had been part of the original doomed colony, and had been packed into the rescue ship just like everyone else. It was starting to wear down in its old age, but the humans and other bots did everything they could to keep it in good repair. The good part of that story was that it had convinced humans to let bots change their pronouns. The bad part was that humans had started deciding that a 9JX using its pronouns meant all bots should use its pronouns. Even though some of them didn't want to, like Nahir or Delta or 4528B1, 8BI, or other bots whose names Murderbot hadn't bothered to save to its long-term storage. Lots of bots on preservation had pronouns other than its, but most of the humans refused to use those pronouns for them, instead just pretending that all robots had the same gender, aka no gender, so therefore all robots should be happy and use the same pronouns. That wasn't how this worked at all. Murderbot liked to think of its gender as indeterminate or not applicable. That had to do with multiple things, including its asexuality or aromanticism and aplatonicism. It wasn't attracted to anyone, not bots, not humans, not other constructs in any way, and didn't want anyone being attracted to it either. That would just be gross. If someone held up a list of genders they were attracted to in any way, Murderbot wanted to be excluded every single time. But that wasn't how it worked for all robots, all constructs, or even all sec units. Murderbot couldn't even imagine being sexually or romantically or platonically attracted to someone, but that didn't mean other people were lying when they talked about their own experiences. Yes, Murderbot had been horrified and disgusted beyond words the first time it learned of a construct who felt sexual and romantic attraction to other people, including humans. Yes, it had made a total jackass out of itself by being a bigoted asshole to them about it, treating them like shit and ranting about how they were just doing this to appease humans and make humans think they could have sex with any construct they wanted. Yes, it regretted every fraction of a second of what it had said and wished it could wipe the incident from its memory. But it wasn't going to do that, no matter how ashamed it was, because that had been one of the most important learning experiences it had ever had in its existing memory. The human, this time Murderbot did check the feed tag and saw their name was Fiscal, their gender was neutral, they used the honorific vir veilleur, they were married to 3 partners, had as many kids, had a pet yellow-tailed phoron, and their pronouns were they, them, their, themselves, singular, was rolling their eyes and making an exasperated huffing noise. "I wasn't talking to the Hollerbot, I was talking to you," they said scornfully, doing their best to stare directly at Murderbot's eyes in that obnoxiously intense way some humans just love to do for some reason. Well, they was staring at Murderbot's opaque faceplate, but didn't realize Murderbot had its eyes closed, watching the scene only through its cameras from the drones it had scattered around the room. Having your face hidden fucking rocked. Murderbot couldn't believe it had gone so long pretending it was fine with letting humans see its face all the time. Talk about a nightmare. "And what makes me different from a Hollerbot?" Murderbot asked, in the tone of voice it used for when humans were being fucking crappy and it wanted to let them know that without actually saying it. It was also a trick the trick it had learned from art. Make the person you were arguing with spell out their own crappy ideas for everyone to hear, and maybe they'd realize as they were verbalizing it just how crappy it was. Fiscal, though, didn't seem to realize how crappy they was being, since they said, with no hint of irony or self-awareness or embarrassment, "You look human, so it's different. You're more of a person, so it's not right to call you an it." So this bigot was literally admitting they didn't think bots were people. Murderbot hoped all the fancy government workers who'd refused to fund this little get-together were crying over how much their supposed little utopia was failing on its most basic advertising principle. "I'm a person whether I'm human or not, whether I use its pronouns or not," Murderbot said, keeping its voice level through a mixture of resigned boredom and a supreme effort of will. 9JX is a person whether it looks human or not, and it wouldn't become more of a person if it started using other pronouns. Fiscal folded their arms across their chest, looking stubborn, like they was in the right or something. "It's not right. I'm just not comfortable calling you an it. It's dehumanizing. You're a person, not a thing. Why don't you try they-them pronouns? I'm sure you'll find people will treat you better if you use them. Using it just gives people an excuse to treat you like a bot." Yeah, Murderbot hoped everyone on preservation was enjoying this. Through one of the drones it had assigned to Dr. Mensa, it could see her dropping her face into her hands at her desk. One of the government officials was sitting in the chair across from her. Keen, the same non-binary human Murderbot had met the last time Mensa tried to set up funding. This mouth open in unabashed shock and horror at the dual-faced display screen on the desk in front of them. Clearly, V hadn't been expecting the public's perception of bots to be this far from the ideal they all prided themselves on. The look of horror on Vith's face was almost worth the hassle of doing all of this for free. And who knew? If this fucking bigot kept talking, maybe the government would be ashamed enough to pay them all in retrospect for subjecting themselves to the bigotry in the first place. Well, a Murderbot could hope. I wrote this in 2022, before finding out that Murderbot literally is a goddamn cyborg. So, yeah. Look at this. Look at how I'm framing everything, and then look at the actual goddamn books, and what the books want you to think. The books want you to just accept, mindlessly, that all robots use its pronouns, because all robots lack genitals. So, lacking genitals equals lacking gender, because Martha Wells is a cis woman who hates trans people and especially hates non-binary people. Murderbot is only allowed to be non-binary because it lacks genitals. Art is only allowed to be non-binary because it lacks genitals. We have yet to meet a single goddamn robot or cyborg in this fucking series who uses pronouns other than its, because the only reason these characters are using its is not because of actually trying to represent real non-binary people who use these pronouns, like me, Stage Whisper. It's just dehumanization. Martha Wells has just decided that these people aren't human because they are either robots or they're physically disabled. So therefore they lack genitals. So therefore they must be non-binary because she equates genitals to gender. And then she says that none of them are human because the cyborgs are physically disabled. So that means that they're not human. So it's literally just dehumanizing physically disabled people, degendering physically disabled people, stereotyping non-binary people, and saying that it's not actually possible to be human or, have genitals or secondary sex characteristics and be non-binary, because the only way to be non-binary in this goddamn setting in Martha Wells' mind is to literally lack sex whatsoever. We have yet to see an explicitly non-binary character. We just get told a background fucking character in rapport uses they-them pronouns, and they don't matter to the story at all. We don't get any discussion or exploration of their gender identity. We're just supposed to act like a character simply using they-them pronouns, even though they don't matter to the story whatsoever, and are meaningless don't even do anything. We're supposed to act like that's good enough representation in 2025 from an author who is pretending that she's progressive, when she can't even be bothered to stop stereotyping non-binary people and aro-ace people, because again, the only reason Murderbot is aro-ace is that it lacks genitalia, and Martha Wells thinks that genitalia is the key to fucking attraction. Last time I fucking checked, attraction isn't stored in the genitalia. Martha Wells, just because you are probably aromantic doesn't mean that people who don't have genitals must be aro-ace. Especially because these people weren't born this way. They were fucking mutilated. Like, what is the goddamn logic here? You think that because people don't have sexual organs, that means they cannot feel attraction to other people? That's not how that fucking works. If you took everybody's bodies or brains and put them into robot bodies without genitals, people would still experience attraction. It's not linked to your genitalia. Especially, there are people who literally lose their genitalia from injuries. So many reasons. They still experience attraction. It all boils down to biological essentialism, what I'm trying to get here. Martha Wells is unending fucking love for biological essentialism. She has decided that how you are born, or in this case, how you are mutilated at your birth, but we're never gonna admit that's what had to have fucking happened in order for this shit to be going on. We're never going to talk about any of that because she doesn't want to, because she just wants you to accept the biological reality. She wants you to accept the biological reality. That's how she sees it. It's biological. It's just biology. You know that fucking scene from the shitty Zootopia movie? Where, what's her fucking face? Jenny says, it's probably their biology, and how everybody who's not a fantasy animal racist is aware that this is just racism. Yeah, Martha Wells doesn't grasp that. She just worships biological essentialism. She keeps pretending that's not what she's doing. With Witch King, she's trying to say, there's two genders. People who wear pants and people who wear skirts. But she said that the people who wear skirts are the men, and the people who wear pants are women. And it's like, okay, you haven't, that's not doing what you fucking think it's doing. You're just doing more bigotry and inventing new ways of being a fucking misogynist. So again, you're still saying women are not allowed to wear the clothes that they want to wear because they are only allowed to wear one type of clothes that has been designated as for women. So, you're just doing misogyny again, and you're just being fucking How does anybody convince themselves that this shit is progressive? And, I expect cis people to be worshipping this shit because it's just bigotry, pretending to be progressive, and they don't actually want to do anything to actually help trans people. But, there's other trans people worshipping this shit, too, and it's like, are you okay? Can you please find a fucking author who actually cares about you? Please? Stop cheering for crumbs. These aren't even crumbs. This is just flat out bigotry. Anyways, this is posted to fanfiction.net, but they kind of suck and you can't access them on all Wi-Fi. It's just basic shit. You see everything that I did in here. All of the things I fucking pointed out. Yeah, this is long before this is before I found out that they are, in fact, fucking cyborgs, a thing she admitted in 2019 and has just been lying about on purpose because she knows that what she's doing is fucking reprehensible, asking us to literally agree that it's good and biologically correct to dehumanize physically disabled black people to justify enslaving them. She knows that's evil. She knows people are going to hate her fucking guts if that ever becomes common knowledge. this is before I knew that, so that's why it's referring to constructs as separate from bots and augmented humans, and it's like, this was also before I gave up. I'm never writing fanfiction for this shit, and I will read the other ones that I have written so far, and you can see everything I'm doing with them, as opposed to what the goddamn series is doing. And especially for a lot of these, you see all these characters I just made up out of thin air? That's on purpose to make you realize how completely and utterly fucking shallow the actual book is. Like, we could have so many goddamn characters and settings and backstories and so much shit, but we don't get any of that. To the point that me making this shit up, it's indistinguishable. Like, there's just so little going on in the fucking series in terms of, like, actual characters, that me making shit up is just, it's, yeah. Anyways, hopefully the fucking microphone was running this whole time. Bye-bye.